Well, 2026, I mean, we've got really the first full year of the more recent tax changes. And we've got a stock market that's at all-time highs. Mm-hmm. And there's clearly a lot of nerve. Consumer confidence is low. And we've now started, we're heading into earnings season, which was started this morning by JP Morgan with really, really good numbers. So I tend to think this is going to be a year that surprises people.
All right. So first, to dig into it, let's just welcome everybody to the Money Alchemist podcast, episode 48, first one of 2026. I'm your host, Ben Jones.
And I'm Brent Gargano.
And we have video now, thanks to our awesome producer, Nick. I won't name your last name, Nick. We're not going to out you yet. But he's done an awesome job. He has done what we were incapable, well, more aptly, what I was incapable of doing last year, and that was getting these things up and running. So I'm glad to bring you all into the room and join us just a little bit more closely. So
I think just to hit the time machine a little bit, I think last year, this time of the year, we had a podcast where we talked about goals and goal setting. And I believe, if I remember right, one of our goals was get on video.
Get on video. Well, so, we failed.
We failed.
we actually, not all together. We tried a couple times. We had probably, I think, 3 false starts. This is not trivial. Getting video.
Now, trickier than you might think.
Now, before people say, oh, well, anyone can get video on TikTok. It's like, okay, whenever you're on a device with an integrated camera, it's trivial. It's easy. I can pull out my iPhone. I can put it down and record myself riffing, no problem. It's a problem, though, when you get multiple cameras with all different angles.
Audio sources.
Yeah, and you want high-quality audio. To do it right, it takes an effort. And there's all these complications that you don't think about. For example, like, is it possible to do a 3-camera setup but also bring in a remote guest and do it live? Can you do all these things at once? The answer currently is not really, not without a tremendous amount of difficulty. So it's more complex than you think, but we're happy to bring you all in, and this is exciting. So we'll keep it going from this point forward, and hopefully get some high quality product out to you guys for the rest of 2026. But before we dig into anything else, I wanted to find out, because this is our first episode of 4 weeks. So you and I,
I think you were sick.
Yeah, we ghosted each other. Well, at the end of the year, when we wind down, I completely check out. I've been going full steam ahead all year long. And, working. I don't even think last year we took a family vacation. We took a 3-day stint out to a lake down in Tennessee, but that was it. So it was a jam-packed year, very exciting, a lot of changes, a lot of upgrades. Some of the personal goals that I set, I did accomplish. Some of the business goals I didn't, but I think I tried to bite too much last year. So that's one of my goals for this year, is make my goals more smart. We'll get into that in our discussion. But at the end of the year, I always kind of just shut down the shop. So the week of Christmas, the week of New Year's, and I did that. It's a good time of year to do that because, all your clients are doing that too. So you get your email inbox kind of quiets down. That's one thing I love about Christmas and the New Year's, just the holidays in general.
Kind of universally accepted that everybody's checking out a little bit.
Exactly. Everybody's like, chill out. Quick story. So I went to Costco on Christmas Eve, which I swore I'd never do. I'm like, people need the Christmas Eve off, but here I was at Costco on Christmas Eve. I forget what I was getting. Heaters, fans. I was actually by the Costco by your house. I think I texted you and told you that.
Yeah.
We went and got a hot dog and a pizza for my kids. 2 of my kids came with me, and I got a client text. And he says, hey, I got your email about the end of year planning to do a Roth conversion. So, I was sitting in the Costco food court, And then I decided, okay, one more thing. So I conferenced in Fidelity. We got the Roth conversion done within plan. It was a pretty sizable conversion too. That was the last thing I did in 2026.
Yeah.
And it was on Christmas Eve.
That's the only hard part about shutting down into the end of the year is that there are just certain things like Roth conversions that if they're not done by 12/31, they just don't get done. And you know, as a planner, I think there's always this anxiety. I'll say that watching the ball drop on New Year's as a grown up with my own business, a little bit. Not that, I mean, we have processes in place to make sure that the balls don't get dropped. You still go into midnight. Like if there was something that got missed or whatnot, like there's just no takebacks. And so I try to shut it down, but it's
tough.
It is challenging.
There's usually like 4 or 5 things that are, urgent that have to get done, but that's a lot less than what's normal in my experience. But yeah, you're right. We ended up trading illnesses. So it was the week prior to Christmas. All my kids, one of them inherited a stomach bug from one of their classmates. It was pretty nasty. And all my kids, it ran through all of my kids. Fortunately, my wife and I didn't get it, but they all traded that for about 4 days. Everybody got better by Christmas Eve. And then we had Christmas. Everybody was healthy. Everything was great. And then that Friday, we had all my family come over, which was the day after Christmas, and we did a big meal, and everything was great.
And then you got everybody else sick.
No. One of my kids, my youngest son, started getting ill. I felt so bad for him because all the cousins were over that were playing, and he just was like, Dad, I'm tired. I want to go lay down. And I could tell he was a little off, but that was the start of the flu.
Oh, gosh.
And then the flu ran through our house. Everybody got it. My oldest son, though, he got it, and he was done with it in 2 days.
Yeah, I hear the flu this year is bad. Apparently, the flu shot is kind of swung and missed at the kind of flu that we've got out there.
I could see that. Well, it was weird for me. It was the flu was like it was my symptoms were on an update schedule. So it started out like a scratchy throat, and then that went away, and then it was a crippling headache and fever, body aches, and then that went away, and then it was oddly it was like one day it was just a ton of sneezing. It was just overwhelmed my sinuses, and it was just like itchy, like a cat in the back of my sinus cavity, and then it went to a cough, and then I got better.
So all that is to say that we skipped our last podcast episode for a very good reason.
Yes, but what did you do
for the holidays?
Yeah.
Well, if you've been listening, you know that we just recently had a third kid. And then my daughter's birthday is also in December, and so it's just honestly December is kind of a little bit of a blur from Thanksgiving all the way through New Year's. So we made it through. We got all the Christmas stuff together, got ready for Christmas. I love to cook. And I really don't. I have parents that are split up. So for a lot of years growing up, I was driving all over the place for holidays, and I really don't like to do that anymore. So I generally bring everybody to me for the holiday meals, which is like great in theory until.
When did that start?
As soon as my house was big enough for everybody to come over.
Yeah.
Like as soon as it wasn't a pain in the neck.
Isn't that is such a rite of passage?
Yeah, like I have the kids now.
Yeah.
You want to come see the grandkids. Like, I'm tired of going to everybody else's house. If you want Christmas dinner, come to me. And my rule of thumb is that, like, I make the protein. So for Thanksgiving, I make the turkey. For Christmas, we did like a prime rib. And then I tell everybody else just to more or less bring sides. And we hodgepodge it together. Yeah.
What is some seminal moment for you? To just, I'm planting my flag down. I am the nexus.
But let's hit goals a little bit. And my wife will laugh because she listens to these podcasts, and so she'll likely hear me say this. So I mean this with love. But we talk about SMART goals, and we're going to hit on goals a little bit later on in this podcast. One of the things is that the goal has to be realistic. And I think one of the things that we struggle with in our life is like you kind of bite off more than you can chew sometimes. So in theory, it sounds great. Hey, we're going to host Christmas and make the prime rib. And like I said, I have a rule where we only do the protein. But my wife, she's trying to be nice to everybody. So she decides, I want to make a couple sides. And I always tell her, I say, don't do it. We've already got enough on us. adding extra stuff. If you don't have to, don't do it. And inevitably, she signs herself up for these sides. And then the day of, we get the protein done, and then the side is like, well, what happened here? And I think a lot of times it's just you have to. There's so much to be said for like visualization. We've talked about this on the podcast, but like people have a tendency to say, "Oh, I'll do this. This will, let's buy a rental, move, change job. I don't know what it, start a business, whatever it is." It's really important to kind of close your eyes and put yourself in that circumstance. Like it's so easy a month in advance to say, well, I'll make these 3 or 4 sides. And then you finally get to Christmas Day and you realize that you got to put together gifts for the kids. You got to get the house clean for everybody else to come over. You got to go buy the meat and get that ready to get on the grill the next day. Like there's just so many things involved that if you add unnecessary, even if it's well intended to add some of the unnecessary stuff, if you were being really honest with yourself at the beginning, it's like really hard to do that. And just, you got to be protective of how much, stuff you add on your plate.
Yeah, you need to give yourself wiggle room. That's what you're getting at.
So anyway, I've now laid down my foot for like future holidays. Like this year, my like protein only rule was kind of like a loose rule. Like, and I let her kind of, smudge it. I'll say next year, everybody else is bringing the sides. We'll do the protein. And
didn't you do prime rib?
We did prime rib, and then so one of my favorite traditions is we do eggs Benedict on Christmas morning. So I did Christmas Eve dinner and then Christmas morning breakfast, and so kudos to my wife. It's a lot to get all that done with the 3 kids and everybody coming over, and so bottom line is it was a great time. We had family over, everybody got along, the food was really good, it all went amazing. But I'd say the day or two leading up to it was just, anytime you're having guests come over, it's stressful. Right?
Yeah. You gotta do the top to bottom house scrub down.
Yeah, because you can't let people know what your house really looks like.
Well, what I'm used to is I'm used to watching my wife go around and do all the deep cleaning, and I just sit on the couch and
yeah, well,
it's a spectator sport. But this particular season, that was not the case.
It's just hard for us right now because, with a 3rd kid, the baby's doing great. She's really well behaved. Everything's awesome. But I think you underestimate, especially if you already have little kids and it's just been a while since you had a newborn, just like how many man hours a newborn takes away. It's not difficult at this point. We've had kids enough times to where we kind of know what we're doing. But it's just like the bottles and the breastfeeding and the diaper changes and the holding the baby because she's, getting restless. It's just a lot of man hours that get taken out of your day when you didn't like have the man hours in the first place. And so you add that with, we have to host the holidays. It was a great time. It was just a little, we got
a little much, but you got through it.
And honestly, I think after it's all said and done, like we wouldn't have it any other way. We love having the family over. We like being at the center of it. We like her parents to be around with my parents. I mean, it's just so much more cohesive than doing our own separate holiday with them and with my parents, just splitting everybody up. It's not as kumbaya.
Yeah. Did you stay up till midnight?
For New Year's?
Yeah.
So we went down to Nashville for New Year's, and I don't know if we talked about this, but my dad has little children, and so my kids and my dad's kids kind of get along, and while the adults stayed up till midnight, the kids, we have a plan. We actually do this with the kids every year. There is a YouTube video that you can pull up where it's like kids dance party ball drop, and so we like the whole day of New Year's Eve, we like set our kids' expectations that they're staying up till midnight. And like, you guys are going to stay up late tonight. It's going to be so much fun. You're going to watch the ball drop, New Year's, da-da-da-da-da. And then as soon as it gets dark, we start like kind of getting the stuff together. And so about maybe 9 o'clock, 9:30, something like that. We still let them, stay up past their bedtime or whatever. But we pull up this video and it's hilarious. It's got all these like dancing animals and just like all this crazy stuff that 5-year-olds just get. And I have the best video of like my kids and their kids having like a midnight, quote, midnight dance party and then watching the ball drop and happy 2020. And then they all went to bed.
You're nicer than we are.
I just realized my kids listen to this podcast, so hope I didn't just out myself.
My wife is the sleep Nazi. love her to pieces, but she is once the clock strikes bedtime, it is everybody's marshaling to bed, absolutely zero exceptions, and my second youngest son was begging Mom, hey, let me stay up till midnight. Let me stay up to midnight. She just completely shut him down. No remorse. What was funny is this particular child went to bed, and then within, I'm not exaggerating, 60 seconds, lights out. He was fully asleep, sawing logs.
Yeah.
He wanted so bad.
I'm not tired.
Yeah. Oh, he was totally tired. But we did not stay up till midnight. In fact, my wife and I, we laid down in bed because we were just going through the flu ourselves. So, we're exhausted. So we ended up just crashing. I think I fell asleep at like 11:15, but I did wake up because my neighbor decided to light up some fireworks. Do you see some of those videos of these big cities? I forget what city it was. I think it was someplace in South Korea. I can't remember, but I saw some videos of the fireworks displays that they had, and it was like, it was absolutely insane.
One of my favorite things that's come up is the drone shows. The drone shows are pretty
They
neat.
are, yeah. And, what's really neat about New Year's Day is everybody celebrates in the globe. I think China has the Chinese New Year is a different date. I don't know what it is, but I think even in China they celebrate the actual New Year's, January 1st, like everybody else does. But everybody in the world celebrates at the same time, so you can get these videos throughout the globe, all these different cities. And how people are celebrating. And there was one city in Asia, I forget where, but they had this big firework disaster, like a bunch of buildings had exploded or something due to a mishandling of fireworks. So they didn't have any fireworks this year. It was all lasers and drones. I forget what city that was. But I was going through and scrolling on my X feed, all these different celebrations. That was pretty cool.
Drones are one of the things that are really changing the world.
They are, yeah. I for good and for better,
For good and for better?
Or worse. Yeah, good and better. Yeah, that did come out right. For good and for worse. Remember that, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but yeah, that was before the election and all the drones were flying around. It was all the hoopla. And we still to this day have no idea what that was all about.
I still get the drone. It still flies outside the house.
Yeah, okay, so for the listener, because you need context.
So we are at our house, and I don't. Maybe some of the people remember last year when all the drone.
No, it was 2 years ago.
That's 2 years ago.
Yeah,
already?
It was 2024.
Well, 2 years ago by calendar, but
Correct.
Really we're talking about like
it was
December.
The end. Yeah, it was right during the election time, so it was like
so
October.
We're talking about a year and a half, whatever. I start looking out my window in my house, and every night, right around 7 p.m., this drone, and this is not a small drone, okay? Drone you buy at the store or whatever is 18 inches. So this thing is like 8 feet across, and it's square. It's like 8 feet both ways, and it has blinking lights on it, so you can see it blinking red and green or whatever, and it follows the same track every night. And it goes up, and we see it go over the woods, and we see it go up to... kind of towards.
You have to put a telescope on that thing, to see what it is up close.
And we it was really prevalent last winter, and then I don't know because it gets dark earlier in the winter. Of course, it's easier to see it in the dark because it has flashing lights. So I don't know if over the summer it was not flying, or maybe I just didn't notice it with the leaves on the trees and then the flashing lights. But it just kind of went to the back of my mind. I never saw it. And then this winter again, I noticed the drone is
You
back.
ought to get a telescopic camera, take a picture, and upload it to ChatGPT. See what it is.
See what it says.
Yeah, see what it says.
I mean,
I'd be so curious to do that. But drones are changing the world. But the drone shows are pretty cool out in China. I see a lot of that. That's like their thing. But they do drone shows out in Kings Island too, which are pretty big.
They're starting to do them all sorts of places. And I would imagine with the way that computers are going. The more and more intricate drone shows are going to be possible. And then not to get a little dark, but the way that wars are being fought. I mean, anybody that's paying attention to the Ukraine situation has seen that these drones. I mean, you've got multi-million-dollar tanks that are essentially no match for a couple $1,000 drone.
Yeah, well, actually segues nicely in some of these additional like broader updates that what's happening in our what's happening now segment is one of the things that happened from our last episode is Maduro was essentially kidnapped or extracted.
Wasn't that nuts?
Well, yeah, what was even nuts is all the details that are coming out and how it occurred, because when you hear this, you're like, oh man, there had to be a lot of casualties with that. There were, but only Venezuelan casualties, absolutely zero. From what I've read, only 20 operators were involved, U.S. operators.
Yeah.
And it started out with a cyber hack that shut down all of the power in the city.
Did you hear what Trump said? He said, we turned off all their lights with a, quote, certain expertise that we have.
Well, I mean, it's actually frightening when you think about it. So that happened. And then there was a bunch, basically an invasion of drones. And I'm sure these were more surveillance drones that kind of pinpointed who's where and what's happening, but I'm sure they had weaponry installed on them too, because there's also reports that the people that survived the attack, if you will, on the Venezuelan side, they're reporting that some of them, the defenders, were crippled, like they couldn't move because of sensations of feeling extremely hot and uncomfortable. And some people were reporting bleeding out of the eyes and the nose, like just crazy stuff. And then, someone else was saying that they're, for when they were under fire by, guns that they perceived were shooting rounds at 300 rounds a minute, which is like super fast. So, yeah, but you got to think like something really advanced took place, because how impossible, when have we ever heard of invading Venezuela is not like a backward country. Like they have modern military equipment and surveillance and things like that.
And they were supported by China.
Yeah. So, the fact that only 20 U.S. soldiers went in, operators went in, 0 casualties. There were reported of 100 casualties on the Venezuelan side. They extracted Maduro, and he's in New York right now, is frightening. That is, crazy. And on a broader context, like what does that mean? The whole, well, it's destabilizing in a lot of ways, but also it's stabilizing in the sense like it kind of sends a signal to some of your adversaries. Now, say what you will about, utilizing that kind of force and policy. I can see why people find that distasteful. But in a way, it does provide stability nationally, because when there's a big bully in the yard and the big bully says this is the way it's going to be, that's generally the way it is.
How much do you think of this as actually about like drugs and the drug trade versus control of the Americas?
It's control. I think the drugs were one way to sell the idea to the American public. Because the American public is hit pretty hard by, drugs and what that does. The drugs are devastating. When we're talking about drugs, I'm talking about specifically fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamine, cocaine. Yes. Like the hard stuff, the Schedule I stuff. I think really what this whole Venezuelan thing was about was natural resources. I mean, and the administration's pretty much come out and said it. It's like it's about the oil, but it's not just about the oil. It's about, the minerals. And, Venezuela is not a small country. Like if you map it over on top of the United States, it's like a little bit more than 1/3 the size of the United States. So it's pretty huge. And it has, it's out of all the countries in the world, it has the largest proven oil reserves. So it's pretty much about the oil and pursue low energy policy, but energy security as well. So I think a lot of it has to do with pushing.
Venezuela is 1/10 the size of the U.S. for whatever it's
1/10.
worth.
Okay.
1/10.
Well, maybe that when you include Alaska in there, that makes sense.
I don't know. I mean, I just looked it up because a third sounded like a big.
I saw a video of it mapped over the continental U.S. Like when I'm talking about like just
it's 1.3 times the size of Texas.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. So forgive me for 1/3 probably was a
clear
little too large.
But
it's not regardless, it's big. So what I think this means is essentially lower oil prices for a longer period of time. But it could easily switch over if a new administration gets in and they change the policy. So
but it's interesting. You got to push and pull because, of course, we had immediately after the Venezuela thing, oil prices came down. But then now we've got these protests in Iran, and those are pushing oil prices up. So, and one of the things, if you go back and listen to our last episode, we talked about predictions for 2026, and one of the beliefs that at least I have is that inflation is calming down, and I think this is one of the reasons is oil prices have several reasons to kind of stay lower for a long period of time.
Yeah, I mean, gas prices have been incredibly low. At least here, it's
I mean they've been $2.45 for a regular gas. We drove down to Nashville from Cincinnati. It's about a 4.5 hour drive in our new minivan. It was great. Cost us like $30 each way to get 5 people. Traveled 4.5 hours.
So lower inflation. We also have, GDP beats. Third quarter 2025 came out at 4.3%.
And that's an inflation adjusted 4.3%.
So
it was actually
strong.
like 8%.
Yeah, it's very strong
year over year.
And a lot of that can be attributed to the shrinking trade deficit, but also too is just a lot of CapEx spending. So these these hyperscalers putting billions and billions of dollars into these data centers is showing up in the numbers.
Well, and there's a lot to be said for the impact, the potential impact of productivity. I mean, if you think about what's been so useful, I mean, one of the more useful things in our market the last few decades, it's been the impact of technology on productivity. And you and I were in a meeting a week ago where we were talking about the impact of AI and what it might mean for productivity. And the story we got told was just kind of interesting to me. So there's a fund out there. I won't name the fund for reasons, but it's an AI fund. And the company's selling point was that we don't just invest in AI tech companies. So I asked, well, what do you like? Like, what are you guys invested in? And so this isn't a recommendation for a stock or anything like that, but the story they told us was of John Deere.
Yeah.
And I guess that if you're like a farmer and you think about how AI is impacting farmers, this was just so cool. I guess in the past, if you're dropping pesticide on a field,
yes,
you fly a plane over and you basically just indiscriminately dump a bunch of this pesticide on the ground, and it gets all over the weeds and kills the weeds, but it also gets on the plants and
kills
on the food
you.
And everything. And now he was giving us an example of like a John Deere product that, like, as you're flying this plane over the field, it's essentially like watching a video of what's below it, and the AI is identifying weeds, individual weeds, and more or less taking a squirt gun and squirting pesticide at this stuff. So it's like the impact of that is you can grow more crops, use less pesticide, people are healthier. I listened to that story and I thought, wow, that's, we talked on our last episode of like, will AI live up to the hype? And I think that what we're probably going to find over time is like the quote hype is less to do with like a robot that can take my trash up to the top of the driveway for me, and like more to do with like in our business, AI note takers that help us take better notes, do more effective follow-up, and ultimately serve more clients with the same amount of resources. And I think things like advancements like that aren't like totally rocket science, but are like practical ways that AI can increase productivity.
Yeah.
And that is all to say that I think that's going to continue to allow economic growth as profit margins expand. And it's also productivity drives inflation down. So I still go back to, I think that we're likely to see a strong economy with lower inflation. And the real question to me becomes the employment situation. Like, how bad does the labor market
it kind of leads into the great question everybody's debating on labor or AI being an enabler of human productivity or a replacement for human productivity.
Yeah.
That's the big argument right now. As a business owner, you and I can both agree that AI it's not capable of replacing anything that we do or any person that's in our company. Like there's no one job in my line of work that is currently being done by a human that I can currently outsource, even with massive investment, fully to AI. It's just
it's like around the edges.
Yes,
that it really helps.
But AI is incredibly helpful and very in enhancing someone's productivity. Like you mentioned, the note taker. That it used to be. I never did this. I always took my own notes, and honestly, I probably did a very poor job at it. But after my meetings, I would go and kind of decompress and type all my notes out, and a lot would get forgotten. What I was worried about when I started using these AI note takers is that, oh man, outsourcing this is going to cause that I'm not going to download it into my brain. But I find that to not be true, because what I do after my meetings, this AI note taker, it takes down pretty good, very detailed notes, much better than mine. Now, it's not what do you call that when you get someone verbatim, word for word? It's not a recording, but
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. But it provides basically a bullet point summary of things that were discussed, and I'm surprised how often it catches things that I forgot about, and so it actually serves as a reminder, because I still do the read, I still do the read through, and what I'm doing is I'm like transposing that into a summary email to the client.
Yeah, it puts together a draft note, and then you have to review the draft note, and it takes your brain back through the meeting. And then you save the draft note. And then most importantly, what's kind of cool is that over time, as you've layered in these more effective notes, because it is really good how much information it gathers out of the meeting. And then it can go back and reference its own notes to help you prepare.
Yeah. And it makes it easy to schedule tasks, to tackle things that need to be done. It is by far a productivity enhancer. It is not replacing anything that I already had doing. It's or any human job that I had. It is enhancing things. Now, that's that one specific point. The other is the John Deere point that you brought up, but I can think of 1,000 different other ways it helps. In my writing, because I do my newsletter, it is immensely helpful. I cannot tell you how much I use it in writing, because a lot of times I don't like to use the same word over and over, or common words. I like to use kind of unique words that people haven't heard before, or maybe don't hear very frequently. I also like to write as colorfully as possible, but still be accurate. So I will oftentimes prompt these tools for like, hey, what's a new word for X? Or what's a different way I can phrase this that's creative. It's never perfect. It never comes out with like a phrase that sounds like my voice.
Yeah.
But I can always use it.
Well, AI is like, I mean, I use it a lot too. And I'll give you a good example. I'm recently getting gutters on my house, and I'm trying to shop out gutter quotes. And I got a company that had sent me a quote, and I negotiated with them. And in the chat that I was inside of chat, it was after the negotiation, it was very convinced that I was getting a good deal.
Yeah.
Like it was like, look, you negotiated, you did all this work, this was a great deal. And if I would ask it questions about like how pricing compared otherwise, it was essentially selling itself that this was a good deal. I did one simple thing. I opened up a new chat, fresh, didn't have the memory of the other chat. And I said, hey, I've got this quote that I've negotiated to this price. What do you think about it? Immediately, it said, well, it's an okay deal. You could get a lot better. And it was just so funny because on the one chat, because it had gone through the reasoning, it was fallible to the same behavior that a human was, believe it or not, because the salesperson that I had negotiated with, one of the sales tactics is to start off with a high price.
Yes.
So they can knock the price down and you're still anchored to the high price and you're convinced that you've gotten a good deal. The AI fell for the same thing. It said, well, your first price was this.
Yeah.
And since you've negotiated it down to this is a very good deal. But then when I took it to a different chat and gave it that without all the context, it was like, actually, this isn't such a great deal. And so I've found that there's like, kind of like you said, AI it's not going to fully replace, at least where it's at now. Like, I don't think it can really adequately fully replace anybody, but it helps any person within the process be more effective. And I think that, like I said at the beginning, I think that, and this all goes back to the GDP thing, because not only are companies spending more money, but there are profit margins are expanding. Companies are starting to implement AI. I mean, 2 years ago when ChatGPT first came out, nobody knew what to do with it. And then we got all the earnings calls where, like, if you didn't mention AI in your company's earnings, you got
remember when
punished.
That happened with blockchain. You had to mention blockchain in your
I remember
earnings
there
call.
were companies that were changing their name to include the word blockchain that had nothing to do with blockchain. And all they were doing was, like, essentially trying to solicit more flows in the public market.
Yeah.
I mean, it's silly. But regardless, I think that the impact of AI is going to be, not to say that I won't have a robot one day that's pulling up the trash up my driveway, but I have a long driveway and it's uphill. So I really can't wait till I get that robot. But really, it's going to be like little things that we become more effective at. And if that increases your productivity by, if our note taker means that without an additional planner, I can service another 10 or 20 clients, I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the last news story that we have is regarding mortgage rates. Speaking of your inflation reduction, one of the things that's been pushing inflation up, well, up until recently, you were sharing a chart with me earlier, which you can bring up if you still have it, about rents and just general inflation is not going. People often conflate inflation going down, that being disinflation, with deflation. Disinflation is when inflation slows down. So prices are still going up. They're just not going up as fast. Deflation is when prices actually go down. So we're experiencing what we're experiencing right now broadly is disinflation. So prices are still moving up, but not up as fast. And a lot of that is due to actual deflation in the housing market. I've noticed this. I don't know if you have. Now, it's still market specific. Cincinnati, where we're located, house prices really haven't come down all that much, although I have noticed they have come down there. Their houses are taking a lot longer to sell. But, we're starting to see decompression in the housing market. A lot of that's because of these higher interest rates. And the Trump administration is really nervous about that going into a midterm election year, which they're already facing a lot of headwinds. I've already forecasted that the House is going to change over and it's going to be, a deadlock Congress. Already kind of is because the filibuster rule, but starting next year. But I digress. You're seeing a lot of window dressing activities. One of these things is the Trump administration has tapped on the shoulders of the Federal Housing Finance Agency director, Bill Pult, to encourage or direct Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which these are kind of quasi-government agencies. The technical term for them is government-sponsored enterprises. But these are the organizations that ultimately source your most mortgages in the U.S. And what they're being directed to do by the Trump administration through Bill is purchase additional mortgages. They basically want to
create excess demand for mortgages, which will drop
like $200 billion.
I mean, what's really at the core here is Trump's PO that the Fed cuts haven't shown up in mortgage rates,
and nor will they, because mortgage rates are kind of
based on 10-year rates.
Yeah,
they're not based on the short-term rates. They're based on the long-term rates. And the Fed, since last September, September 2024, so back to our debate last year on 2 years, a year and a half ago, the Fed has dropped rates 1.75%. Do you know how much the 10-year Treasury yield is down by?
Barely anything.
I'm not looking at it exactly, but it's basically down 0.5%, maybe 0.5 point. So it's just, I think Trump's frustrated because home affordability is, look, if you've been anywhere close to trying to buy a house in the last 5 years, like, how crazy that's gotten. And, the price of the house is a function of the cost of a house rather is a function of the price and then the interest rate. And as the Feds drop short-term rates, it just hasn't shown up in long-term rates. So Trump's done everything from floated the idea of a 50-year mortgage, which I don't know if we want to get into that now, but I don't think that's a good idea.
That's not going to fly.
It just doesn't change the payment enough. Like if you actually do the math on a 50-year mortgage, you don't actually save a lot of money.
Nope.
So you just get diminishing return.
Yep.
And so the 50-year mortgage seems like a silly idea. Maybe Fannie and Freddie providing some excess funds essentially for mortgages. Maybe that works, but I don't know. I'm a free markets person. I tend to think that the key to lower house prices or whatever is find ways to increase the supply of homes.
Well, they did kind of kite an idea, which I don't think the administration can do legally. There's a lot of things being proposed by the administration that's just like, I don't see how that's going to work. One of those was like credit card interest rates being capped at 10.
On credit card rates.
Come on, that's not going to fly. But another one of these was banning institutions from purchasing single-family properties, which was a shot fired at Blackstone. And I got to correct the record here. I've seen so many people on social media attacking BlackRock for buying single-family homes. People, it's not BlackRock. It's a company called Blackstone, and it's very target-specific. They kind of target markets like Las Vegas. It's not as big of an issue as people make it out to be. What's driving the rental property investment right now is wealth concentration. It's retail investors buying second, third, fourth homes and renting them out. A lot of people are doing it for tax advantages. A lot of people do it for VRBO or what's the other one?
And something I've been vocal about this before. I run into a lot of clients that are buying new houses and they're so reluctant to give up their old interest rates that they go to buy a new house and then they just want to
keep
rent
their
the old
one.
house.
Yeah, and rent it. Yeah.
And there's so many reasons this doesn't make a lot of sense, but primarily one of the big ones is that you get a major tax incentive for selling a primary residence as opposed to a rental property. And once you've converted your primary residence into a rental property, there are some rules around it. But if you wait too long, you effectively
2 years,
3 years, I thought
you had to stay in there 3 out of the 5.
Well, the way that the rule works is that you have to have lived in the house and used it as your primary residence for 2 of the last 5 years.
Okay, I got it.
So
backwards.
And you get an exemption on capital gains for people that are single, $250,000 of gain, and married filing joint $500,000. So if you've got $500,000 of appreciation in your house, not paying tax on that, aka selling it as a personal residence, versus paying tax on that, aka selling it as a rental property, is. It's hard to quantify it on a podcast for anybody, but capital gains rates vary, and it's pretty easy to say they're at least, let's say, 15 to 25%. So you're talking 15% of 500K is 75,000.
Most people don't consider this because this is getting into tax nuance. Most people think in terms of, I don't want to give up this low interest rate, real estate good, therefore I need to rent because that's how I get rich.
And inevitably, like I can just tell you, having worked with clients, that one day, unless you die unexpectedly early, you're going to get old enough to where you're going to look down at this rental property and go, do I really want the hassle of owning this thing?
How many people do you know have even planned their
I guess my point is, I guess here's my point. Not selling your primary residence when you move out and instead renting it can cost, like it sounds good, to all your friends. You go around and say, well, I got a really low interest rate, so I'm going to have a rental property. I'm going to create rental income. And in all likelihood, you're probably shooting yourself in the foot when you eventually sell that property.
But that is not what most people are doing. Most people are holding onto their homes. They're renting. They're buying additional real estate. So what's driving a lot of this inventory crunch, which really isn't happening as much right now because housing prices are starting to relax. But prior to this, where it's not Blackstone, it's actually individuals with money to invest, and they want to put it in real estate, so they do. And I'm actually a fan of that. I don't think that should be regulated. But that's ultimately has a cost. The cost is a lower supply. So we should touch on goals planning, because that is the title of today's episode. So I think that we could talk about, this is the problem when we don't do a podcast every 2 weeks. We have too many things to talk about and we end up going over. But let's talk shift gears a little bit and talk about goals planning for 2026, some things, and strategy planning for 2026. What are some things on your mind that listeners should be aware of this year and before it gets too long? Because it's going to be here, it's going to go by before we know it, like 2025 did.
Well, 2026, I mean, we've got really the first full year of the more recent tax changes. And we've got a stock market that's at all-time highs. Mm-hmm. And there's clearly a lot of nervous. Consumer confidence is low. And we've now started, we're heading into earnings season, which was started this morning by JP Morgan with really, really good numbers. So I tend to think this is going to be a year that surprises people. I think that we will likely see, the stock market. There's a phrase in investing. It's that the stock market tends to climb a wall of worry. I think there are a lot of worries out there right now, but I think ultimately as we get through the year, we're likely to see through a lot of that stuff. If we get less Fed rate cuts than expected, it's likely because the economy is holding up better than expected. Mm-hmm. I think inflation is coming down for the reasons that we've talked about. So if I've never had a plan and I don't really know, should I be invested, should I not be invested, I would really take stock of how much cash do I have, how much do I have in stocks, what do I want to be doing this year, what is my circumstances, what are my circumstances this year as compared to last year, as compared to next year, and really make sure that you have a plan that doesn't leave you behind if the market continues to go higher. Because I think one of the fallacies when the market's at all-time highs is that, well, gosh, it's not a good time to invest. I'm going to keep my money on the sidelines and wait for a downturn. And maybe you can time that well, but the reality is markets can persevere longer than you. What's the phrase? The market can
stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think that the mindset of, well, I'm going to stay on the sidelines right now because eventually some of this might fall apart. And if that's been how you've looked at things for the last while, you're probably feeling a lot of pain right now, having watched the market do what it's done. And I think it's really important to sit down, have a plan, have an allocation that's purposeful, that's not built on a hope or a guess or what you might think the stock market does, and really take some time to educate yourself on the benefits of long-term investing. Because you may be, a lot of people right now are worried about an AI bubble or whatnot, and maybe we'll eventually get that. But if I went and ran some scenarios now saying you started investing in 1997 versus 2000, they're two very different setups. The loser's game in investing is trying to call tops and bottoms. The most successful investors allocate with intention, and they put themselves in a situation where they can afford to stay invested through the ups and the downs.
Mm-hmm. And that's making sure that they do properly consider what they're going to need, what kind of capital they'll need, and when they'll need it.
Yeah, so it's always good to really go back and revisit your plan. Try to, like we said at the beginning of this, I think that it's so important to visualize, close your eyes and, okay, so let's say you're planning on buying a new house and you want to get through this, close your eyes and walk through the house transaction, you're shopping for a house, you're in the house and you're thinking, man, this could be a good house. Close your eyes and live a day in the life in the house in your head. See how these things realistically play out. Start to get some framework of what's important to you and make sure that your money is aligned with that narrative.
Yeah. So what you're kind of hinting at is this notion of visualizing the end result. That's a common tool that motivational speakers say to use when you've got a tough goal to achieve. For example, right now, I have to run Cat 6 lines throughout my house. This has been a goal of mine for 8 months. Yet it is not done because it requires me to fish wires through walls and I have to drill holes into the wall, cut out drywall, replace that drywall. It's a giant pain in the butt. I don't want to do any of it. The last thing I want to do on the weekend is this. So I was listening to some motivational speaker, and he was like, visualize the end result. So I'm trying to visualize the end result of these Cat 6 lines run through my house. And I have to say, it hasn't motivated me one bit.
Well, I think I look at visualization a little differently. I think that people get like kind of grand ideas in their head, but they don't really live them in the like the reality of an idea is very different than kind of what we sell ourselves at the beginning. And I think we could do a lot to kind of merge expectations and reality by like closing our eyes and really kind of putting ourselves in that position.
Yeah, you mentioned you do that a lot, and it's served you very well in your business.
Yeah, and I think really, I mean, it's the buy versus rent, or well, I'll take a step back. The other thing I think is really important when it comes to goals is not focusing so much on like the outcome, but focusing more on the inputs. So like, what can you do when it comes to the things that you eventually want? Like, as opposed to, just saying, well, I want that, so I'm going to go get that. Like, what do the characteristics of somebody that has that look like? How do you set up, the circumstances for something to happen? I want to own my own business. Great, right? So you can set a goal of owning your own business. Well, what are some of the things that somebody that starts a business has together, right? They have access to money. They have an expertise that they can monetize. So like, okay, how do I build my savings so that I can have a launch pad? How do I develop expertise that people are willing to pay for? If you focus less on, well, I want to start a business, and more on what can I do to set myself up for the conditions so that I could be able to start a business, I think you'll be more successful.
Yeah, so you gotta lay the foundation.
Yeah,
essentially. So, what do you think about the acronym everybody throws out called SMART? SMART goals. Yeah. We were talking about that prior. Actually, I was talking about that with one of our fellow advisors, Matt, and he had a funny response. He says, yeah, SMART was pushed on me by about two different managers. So my immediate response was to push back on it and say, I don't like it. I thought, that's interesting. It's funny how humans are like that, because I'm like that too. So if you tell me, oh, you need to do this, I'm automatically like, well, that's dubious. I'm not going to do that. I resist you.
That human nature.
But then, we
want everything to be our own idea. That's the truth of
and
that.
It makes no sense if you think about it. Like, why wouldn't we happily embrace a good idea? I think SMART. I used to be an anti-goals guy, because I'm by nature a very anxious person. So when you put a goal in front of me, all I do is I just worry like, okay, how am I going to get that goal? And, it just stresses me out. So I kind of live by the approach of just do the best I can every day, no goals. But then what I found is that as you get busier, you get way more things that need to be done than you have time. So you almost have to choose what to fail at.
Yeah, definitely.
And when that's the case, you need to optimize your time to try to get all those high priority things done. And the best approach to that is through goals planning. So, I'm like, okay, now it kind of clicked into place. Like, okay, now I see the value of goals. So, I kind of like ever since that epiphany of mine, which sounds moronic because, who doesn't believe in goals? It's kind of dumb that I used to think that, but SMART acronym, which stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, makes a lot of sense. Now, I don't purposefully go through those and say, okay, that's what I need to do, but I do an element of that. For example, like one of my goals is this year, a personal goal of mine is to get my blood work the way that I want it. I'm not going to get into details. I'm a healthy person, very fortunate for that. But there's a few things in my blood work that I'm like, okay, that could use improvement. So what I've decided to do to that end is really dial in my diet, but then more than that, work out every day. Not every day. I think I want to do 5 days a week. Which I was falling short on because I considered it low priority. So, I basically went through what you said. What does it look like to make this possible?
Close your eyes and like live a week in the life of Ben Jones working out 5 days a week.
You know what I concluded?
Because when you close your eyes and you actually try to like you're going to be like, wait, I got to take the kids to school here. I got to do, and then like the reality of where you have to time this out. Like it's so easy to say, well, I'm going to work out 5 days a week. Now close your eyes and figure out where that goes.
Well, and that's exactly what I did. And the conclusion was the only way this is going to work is if I get my butt up out of the bed in the morning.
Yeah, one answer.
Yeah, and I have to wake up at 6 a.m. to make it possible. So
is that achievable in the SMART? Is that the...
Yeah, it's absolutely. I've been doing it every day this year. By the way, my wife absolutely hates it. She attacks me every chance she gets. Attacks too strong a word, but she complains that she says, "You wake me up at 6 every day." It's like, well, I'm sorry. I have to, but yeah,
did you know that statistically that the second Friday in January is considered Quitter's Day for people giving up on their New Year's? So
I believe it. Yeah.
I'm just looking down at the calendar. That's this Friday. Do you think you'll make it through your?
Yeah, I think so. What derails me when I get on these binges, in a good way? I don't know. Is binge a pejorative, or can that be a good thing too?
I think there can be good binging.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
I'm workout binging.
Obsessions.
Yeah. So what throws me off every single time is when I have to travel. Every time, without fail. So if I have to go on vacation or something like that, I will
fall off.
Yeah, I'll fall off, and then it takes like you gotta claw into your soul and like pull out that motivation again, and it's so heavy to do that. But yeah, that's one of my goals this year is to kind of get my blood work right. I have other goals too. I don't know if you want to share those, but my professional goal here, we're doing one right now. This video, getting this done, and I want to continue to get really good at this podcast. I want to stop using pause words. I'm really bad at conversational flow on the podcast. I stop to think too much, too many ums and ahs, and words don't click into place as quickly as I want them to. So I'm gonna try to get better at that. I think that does improve with repetition.
And back to the foundation, like what characteristics does somebody that gets better at that have? Well, they do it.
They do it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and there's so much to be said for like if you don't know kind of where to start relative to your goals, I would say what our advice would be, and of course, coming from a financial person, this is financially oriented, but it could be in any area of your life. It's like just start by kind of statusing where you're at. Like get it all out on paper. In our life, when we work with prospective clients and clients, that looks like building a plan. What assets do you have? Where are they? What are your expenses? What kinds of things are important to you? Like let's just put it all on paper first. And then once we can, again, visualize the bigger picture, what a lot of times happens is you kind of live in the reality of what the future might look like, and you start asking other questions. I think a lot of times our goal as advisors with the plan isn't to condemn somebody to the future that the plan spits out. It's to show them something that like doesn't condemn them to failure, like shows them that they'll be okay, so they can stop trying to think and work out of this anxious brain, and they can start asking like bigger questions without having to be worried about, well, do I have enough resources? Well, let's put a plan together that shows that your resources are going to be okay. Now tell me a little bit more about what's important to you. And then all of a sudden the goals and you start to be able to articulate these things more effectively, slowly but surely.
Yeah. And I think most people need a prompt for that sort of thing. And I want to bring to anybody who's still listening, we are going over today. Sorry about that. But anybody still listening, you've got a great resource that you're going to put in the show notes to help prompt these types of questions that you can ask yourself, like, are you ready? There's all sorts of great questions in this checklist that you have. What is this called? It's,
so
2026, what issues should I consider at the start of the year?
So we have it's a checklist that covers a lot of the common nuances or things to be thinking about as you get into the beginning of the year. So if you go to the show notes, there will be a link. You can click that. I think you put your name and email, and then it just walks you through questions. Yes, no, has this changed? It gives you some feedback, and then of course, if you have follow-up questions, you can always send us an email.
Yeah, it's finance oriented. Yeah. So if you're looking,
this is not about health. This is about how to get your money in order for the new year.
If you're looking to improve your financial life in 2026, click this link, go through the checklist. Obviously, we're available if you need to have someone to bounce ideas off of and communicate the results of this checklist with. Brent is a fantastic conversationalist in that regard, so I'd recommend you reach out to him. But I do think that we should wrap up.
Well, I would just say, just last thing on that, if you have any questions, any comments, a very easy way to get in touch with us. Our email is comments@moneyalchemistshow.com. We do watch that email inbox, so you can reach out there.
Yeah, feel free to ask us any questions. We'll get back to you within 24 hours. So both Brent and I monitor that email address. So we like to wrap up every single episode now with a tip of the week. You got a pretty good one for this week. So I want to...
We had a third kid in October. So we have been, I'll say DoorDash has been our friend. So I'm a frugal guy, and something about like paying somebody else to deliver food to me that I could have gone and gotten myself, and paying a bunch. I mean, because these apps, charge you more for the food, and then you add tips and such. So I have found it's probably been there for a while, but it's new to me as I've had come into the need. But apparently Costco sells DoorDash gift cards. So I go to Costco and now I buy $100 of DoorDash gift cards for $80, and I get 2% back at Costco because I'm an executive member.
Yeah. And
gosh, I think we've probably spent $600 on DoorDash in the last 3 months is my guess, maybe more, and 20% off all of it. So,
but DoorDash, the bill is all inclusive of the food, right? So you're not paying the restaurant and DoorDash at the same time, or are you?
Yeah. I mean, they wrap it into one transaction. Okay. So like the way that it works for me, I actually have a credit card. Maybe another good plug for just go check your credit card benefits. I didn't even know I had this benefit, and I was looking at happens to be the Chase Sapphire Preferred credit card, and one of the ancillary benefits is they pay for your DoorDash Dash Pass membership. It was like $10 a month, but if you bill it to that credit card, they reimburse it every month. And so I got the Dash Pass. I get in there. It's great because when you have Dash Pass, like certain restaurants give you buy one get one free. Certain ones are like 15% off. There's all these little deals, and then really you just go through, click the restaurant you want, click what, build out your order, and then you add a tip in there. And if you've already got the DoorDash gift cards preloaded, it just debits that balance, and 30 minutes later, the food shows up at my door.
So I'm gonna reiterate this so I understand it, because if I understand it, the average listener can understand it. To game DoorDash, get a Chase Sapphire credit card, bill your DoorDash subscription fee to that card because it'll get reimbursed. So you basically get that card, put nothing else on it, and then just have that happen. And then go to Costco and buy the DoorDash gift certificates, because you get essentially 20% off, and then load those gift certificates on your account, and then you got essentially free DoorDash delivery.
And then better yet, order fajitas for $2 from the Mexican restaurant down the street on a discount. You get like fajitas for $2. We had a whole dinner for...
I think that's a great tip. Great tip. I like it. It's a financial hack. You heard it here first, guys. All right. So thank you for listening to this bi-weekly. Is this bi-weekly? Yes. Bi-weekly episode of the Money Alchemist podcast. And we look forward to catching you all next time.
All right. Cheers.
Opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Advisory services offered through National Wealth Management Group, LLC.